All right, well, notwithstanding the objections of some in the opposition, the federal budget passed this evening. No big surprise there. Let's bring in our panel of parliamentary journalists, and let's start out talking about that. Susan Delacourt is a columnist with the Toronto Star. Joël-Denis Bellavance is the parliamentary bureau chief for La Presse. John Ivison is a columnist for the National Post and parliamentary bureau chief for Post Media. Good to see you all again. Susan, the budget's passed as expected, so no snap election. Which federal leader do you think is most relieved about that?
Well, I wanted to say Justin Trudeau because it's his budget, or Chrystia Freeland, but I would imagine, I think it's Erin O'Toole. I think despite the fact that he did rush an environmental plan out the door, his team does not seem absolutely ready, or just not ready, to quote another ad from another time. I think Mr. O'Toole would benefit from a summer of a little getting out and talking to conservatives, because it doesn't seem like they're all moving as one right now.
All right, Joel. So go ahead, finish, Susan.
No, that's all.
All right, JD, what do you think?
I would opt with the same leader. Erin O'Toole must be the one who's more relieved that the budget is finally passed and that there's no snap election, because he would have suffered maybe more damage if there was a spring election. Now, as Susan mentioned, he needs some time to be able to pick up his groove. And maybe with the vaccination campaign going better in parts of the country, he may start a barbecue season this summer and try to meet and greet Canadians. So I think he's the one who's most happy that this budget is now behind everybody.
All right, a low-emission barbecue season. John, what do you think?
This is the shortfall of coming third, because I was going to say the same thing, but I agree with my colleague.
Let's pretend you're coming first.
Erin O'Toole will be relieved. I would say that Justin Trudeau, though, will be relieved at the reception the budget has got, notwithstanding critics like myself who thought it was a pretty cynical vote-buying exercise. But there was a Leger poll which Post Media ran that suggested 15% of New Democrats would be more likely to vote Liberal. And it doesn't sound that much, but probably represents about 500,000 votes if it were extrapolated. So if he could get those 500,000 votes from the NDP, I think he will be very happy with the way things have gone.
All right, let's move on to the pandemic response, which is chiefly the reason nobody said they wanted an election now or some people did say they wanted to focus on this. Susan, Ontario is now is going to be getting more help from the military and from the Red Cross. Cases have been raging for weeks in that province, and the request is coming in now. Okay, we've lost Susan, but let me jump to JD and we'll get back to Susan. So JD, what do you think about the time it's taken for Ontario to ask for this help and to get it?
Well, it just shows that the government is still in chaos mode, if I may say, responding to what's happening instead of anticipating events. And that shows that the situation is getting more dire in Ontario compared to other provinces. In Quebec, the number of cases has not gone down under 1,000, about 889 cases today, whereas in Ontario it remains high at about 3,500. So the provinces maybe should have asked for help because earlier, just to accelerate the vaccination campaign, because right now Ontario is really alone in where the situation is really getting out of control.
John, what are your thoughts on this and the request coming when it does from Ontario for help from the military again?
Well, I thought there was some good news today that the R number, the number of people who are infected per individual case, seems to be below 1 for the first time. That suggests that perhaps we've peaked. And I think that could not have come at a better time for Ontario, because obviously things are pretty dire. And when you see very sad cases like the 13-year-old girl who died in Brampton, it suggests that these new variants are really grabbing hold in a way that we haven't seen. So let's hope that the peak has been reached and that help is coming just in time.
Susan, we've got Susan back now. Help's coming from the military in Ontario and from the Red Cross, and I'm wondering what you think about the timing of the request. And the dynamics we've seen the last couple of weeks when the federal government first said, look, we're ready to help with anything you need. And Doug Ford said, just send me more vaccines. I don't need any other help than that right now. So things are changing in Ontario. And what do you make of the timing of this?
Well, I think it's probably, as you allude to there, coming a little later than we had expected. I think I, as an Ontarian, lifelong Ontarian, can't help but see it through the long lens of history, too. You know, in the long lens of things, Ontario is right now a have-not province. You know, Newfoundland was always the have-not, and the picture of this, of Newfoundland, mighty Newfoundland sending 9 people to Ontario today, really does, it almost turns the Federation upside down and shows just what a brutal third wave this is. I think the death of the 13-year-old girl, too, is a moment. I think this is a day in which we really see how much this has unsettled Ontario and sort of turned it upside down. But we knew that that the federal government has been meeting since last weekend about what they could do for Ontario. Ontario didn't flick the official asking switch until today, which people are going to ask some questions about too. But I do think the situation is almost so dire there that I don't know that this is the time to say who should have done what first. It's just been a bad couple of weeks in Ontario.
John, let's broaden that conversation too to the rest of the pandemic response. Principally, let's focus a bit on the borders. Erin O'Toole today calling for the cancellation of all international flights, not just the flights from India and Pakistan, which has been done, but we have people taking flights to the border and then taking taxis across into Canada. People paying the fines and skipping the mandatory hotel quarantine. Do we have a coherent border policy right now, John?
Well, I don't think we do. I think it was interesting. Bill Blair tweeted out at the weekend that the government has prohibited non-essential travel for the last year, and that international travel is only less than 2% of all cases. Now, if you actually go to the Public Health Agency website, they admit that really underestimates the number of travel-related cases, because it only applies to those that are directly on a flight, not any community transmission subsequently. It doesn't apply to any land or sea travellers. Suffice it to say, I think that Blair was trying to deflect criticism that Doug Ford had raised, that these new variants didn't swim here. So we've got a bit of a spat going on. Obviously, O'Toole is piling in as well, because he sees this as a bit of a vulnerable heel for the Liberals, and the Liberals are already playing defence on it. But I think it is behooving on O'Toole to acknowledge the fact that if you do shut down everything, there's a price to pay for that. Yeah. And I think this is a discussion we need to have before the next thing rolls around. Is that we can close everything, and at the moment, frankly, I'm in favour of closing everything, including interprovincial flights. It seems ridiculous to me that we've got a P1 variant in Vancouver, primarily based in British Columbia, and you can get 7 flights a day out of Vancouver into Ontario. Clearly, that's going to result in that P1 variant spreading.
Right. Quick answer from your Joël-Denis and then Susan. Do we need more done at the border?
Well, we could always do more, but there's a problem the government has to deal with. If you suspend all flights from abroad, you will probably affect the supply chain, because a lot of the cargo comes with passenger commercial flights. So that's a dilemma that the government has to wrestle with. And so far, that's why you've seen maybe some flights still bringing some passengers. And for them, the best option is to impose quarantine in the hotels and then 14 days later at home. But it's a dilemma, because the supply chain has already been affected, and if you impose more restrictions, the supply chain will also be more affected.
Susan, do we need to do more? Are we doing the right things, or is there still work to be done on securing the border and trying to keep these variants out?
Yeah, I think it's clear that these are coming from other places. The problem is there's a moral one. You don't want to feed xenophobia. There's a logistical one. You don't want to affect the supply chain. And also, people are cranky about these travel requirements. That it's not just the governments that are resisting, it is the public that is resisting these travel requirements. So, with every story of a stopped flight, there comes stories of tragedy and people not being able to get abroad. So it's not as simple as it sounds, but I think we should do more.
All right. Thank you all for your time. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.